The January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol will forever impact families of first responders who were there at the scene on that day. 4 police officers took their own lives following the violent assault. Scott MacFarlane shares a story of a widow who is advocating on behalf of her husband. Scott, good morning.
Hey, Anne-Marie and Vlad. Erin Smith tells us her husband, D.C. police officer Jeff Smith, had no history of mental illness or depression until he came home from work from here on January 6th.
Jeff was funny. He was a jokester.
D.C. police officer Jeff Smith had a family he loved, a dog he loved, and his wife Erin told us a career he loved.
Being a police officer, it was his calling.
He knew that's what he wanted to do and that's what he should be doing.
He did.
But he had no idea what awaited him on January 6, 2021, when he and his riot unit raced to the Capitol. Body camera footage obtained by CBS News reveals Jeff arrived on the front lines as rioter Ashley Babbitt was shot and killed while trying to breach a smashed window near the U.S. House floor.
They were in the hallway, and the first thing that he could remember hearing was shots fired.
How did he characterize it?
He characterized January 6th as the worst day of his life.
After hours fighting off the mob, Erin says Jeff returned home in the early morning with a black eye and in an even darker mood.
I went to sleep, and then the next day, his demeanor changed, and he was never the same.
What changed?
He didn't want to talk. He was pacing at night and during the day.
Sleeplessness?
Sleeplessness. The jokes stopped. The dancing around the house stopped.
Jeff went to the police medical clinic the night of the attack to report a blow to the head. But notes from a follow-up visit a week later, reviewed by CBS News, do not show he was asked about his mental health. And then one night, Erin says she woke up to find him crying in bed. What did you think was going on?
Truthfully, I wasn't sure. I tried to console him, tell him everything was going to be okay. I just told him that I loved him and that we'll get through whatever this is.
9 days after January 6th, Jeff Smith took his own life, one of 4 officers who died by suicide in the 7 months after responding to the attack.
I think the physical attack on him changed him. And if he didn't go to work that day, he'd still be here.
It was just the beginning of Erin's loss. Like most jurisdictions, D.C. did not consider any suicide a line of duty death, denying Erin much of the family's income, health insurance, and ceremonial honors. Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick suffered fatal strokes the day after January 6th, ruled a line of duty death he laid in state, while Erin Smith received nothing.
No notes, no recognition, nothing from the city, nothing from the department. And it's hurtful and it's sad that they can't even reach out to the widow of one of their own officers.
It literally stops. The pace stops 30 days after the death.
With the help of attorney David Weber, Smith decided to fight D.C. on its decision. Weber said the burden was on them to make the case January 6th caused Jeff's death. They say they found the proof in Jeff's body cam footage.
And you see he's getting jostled here.
He's getting jostled.
Slowed down, Weber contends the video shows someone in the mob seized Jeff's baton, allegedly striking him with it.
Right there, it's gone. And now you're going to see him fall backwards.
Then there's this. Now, outside the Capitol, a metal pole sails in from the crowd, hitting Jeff head on. He took shelter in a stairwell.
Are you hurt? Yeah, probably like a metal pole, bam, right in my face.
There was a physical injury that took place here. We are able to prove that he suffered a traumatic brain injury.
It was more than a year until D.C. agreed. Earlier this month, Erin received this letter declaring Jeff died from an injury sustained while performing his duties on January 6th.
Why do you think it took so long for the District of Columbia to determine that?
With a suicide comes a stigma and something that the police department doesn't want to face or recognize.
I think she's a hero.
Illinois Democrat Tammy Duckworth and Texas Republican John Cornyn say they hope this ruling lays down a marker for the 3 other officers who died by suicide after the 6th.
It was a traumatic event, and I think it's entirely appropriate that the law enforcement officials be covered.
And for police families nationwide, the 2 senators have introduced legislation to allow for line-of-duty death designations when police officers take their own lives. More than 750 officers have died by suicide since 2017.
The military has made this pivot, understanding that injuries to the brain, to the psyche, is just as important as an injury to the body.
Erin Smith is advocating for the bill.
What do you think Jeff would say about this issue?
I believe he would be proud of me right now. I'm fighting for my husband, but I'm also fighting for everyone else who has gone through this as well. And it deserves the recognition.
If the legislation is approved, for officers who die by suicide after January 1st, 2019, there would be eligibility for line of duty benefits. The D.C. Police Department, the D.C. Mayor's office didn't comment for our report. As for Erin Smith, she says she can't bring herself to watch the body camera footage from her husband. She told us she relives it every day already. Vladimir.
Scott, such powerful reporting. I told you earlier this morning that I think that Erin is a hero for doing what she's doing, because she could have easily just focused on her life, her husband's legacy, but instead, as she told you, she's doing this for all the other families out there who are also going through something similar. So how was she able to get the attention of Congress?
The distinctiveness of this historic, horrific moment does give her a platform. Again, there were 4 officers who died by suicide who responded here January 6, 2021, and from a mob that was trying to target, if not kill, members of Congress. So Erin's advocacy did get the attention of members of Congress. And I'll underscore the significance that she has a Democratic senator and a Republican senator championing this legislation. That's important currency to have in this building. Senator Duckworth, the Democrat from Illinois, Senator Cornyn, the Republican from Texas. She's been advocating, but to be clear, this legislation impacts more than just federal or D.C. law enforcement. This would impact police in every community in America, providing possible federal benefits to officers in small towns and big cities, state and local police who die by suicide.
It would be an absolute game changer. Do we know what the status of the bill is?
It's been formally proposed and formally gained co-sponsors. That puts it in the same pot as hundreds of other pieces of legislation, but it has some momentum. Not just because it has bipartisan support, but because there is this call throughout the Capitol to do more to help law enforcement in the wake of January 6, 2021, where there is this prominent, profound appreciation for what law enforcement did that day and the burdens they face. But there's a timer on this. There's an egg timer. Legislation that is formally proposed here has to be passed into law by the end of this calendar year, or it expires, and the next Congress would have to take it up. And Congress has a very long summer recess due to the re-election campaigns they're all running. So time is short, but there is momentum.
And so, Scott, how would this legislation impact other police nationwide? And what have you learned about police injuries sustained on January 6th?
So local police officers who die by suicide would at least be eligible for these federal benefits if the legislation passes, but only if the legislation passes. So again, that's local police, county police, state police. Every community in America would have some eligibility for their law enforcement officers. That being said, there still is that mountain to climb to get it passed into law. As for the other injuries from here on January 6, 2021, by our latest count, they're still measured in the dozens. Dozens of police were hurt, some of whom are still nursing their injuries. I just spoke with a Capitol Police officer still dealing with a torn shoulder, broken thumb, and clubbed foot. He just recently got back on the job, partially, 15 months later. The magnitude of what happened that day is difficult to measure without looking at the physical and trauma injuries suffered by the first responders.
I think you're spot on. And, you know, so often we can identify the physical injuries, but there were other injuries. The psychological injuries are not taken into account. And it's good to see a bill like this, or at least somebody talking on Capitol Hill about all the range of ways an officer can be injured by an experience like this. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So if you know someone who is struggling, please call 1-800-273-TALK. Professionals are available to help 24 hours a day.